I will kind of give a quick warning here. Last night I was not doing so well. Probably about the middle of the night or so. I got the chills, and it could have just as well put me in the icebox, and I would have been warmer in there. Luckily, I sleep with a woman that when I woke her up, she got me a couple, 2, 3 blankets, and after a while, that helped. So, woke up with a fever this morning, 102. I wanted to call Dr. Ron, but he might not have appreciated that early. But it dropped down to 98. So if you want to keep away from me, understandable. We probably will not stay for fellowship lunch this time. Probably the first time since we've been here. All right. There's a number of married couples here. You've all gone to weddings. Weddings are a special time. You know, weddings, it seems like it goes through phases, doesn't it? You know, this destination wedding. Any of you go on a destination wedding for your wedding? I did. Destination was the local Adventist church. Good destination. We normally don't think too much of weddings in many respects, other than it's a time of celebration. Here, John chapter 2, I don't believe it was a coincidence that John, probably the only one that gives this this story about the wedding feast or the wedding and the wine. I think that he had a better understanding maybe of some of the other gospel writers as well. Some of the scriptures that you are familiar with, that you've repeated year after year, many times throughout the year, we're going to be touching upon some of those and put them in perspective of the Jewish wedding, the customs and symbols of that time. Understanding the Jewish wedding customs and symbols unlocks the secrets of passages which might make no sense without this understanding. John lays the groundwork in making sense of these passages. In the New Testament, a man wishing to get married to someone's daughter first had to discuss the matter with the potential father-in-law. This could have been done by the groom's father, or a matchmaker, or possibly a broker of marriages. This conversation between the bride's father and the groom would revolve around the status level of both families. The father would not allow his daughter to marry someone of a lower standard. Marriages had a tendency to bond the two families together and thus fuse their status. Typically, the groom and the bride would would come from similar status groups. If one of them came from a higher status group and the other one a lower, the one with a higher status group would actually would actually lower their standard or status group, and the one with a lower status group would actually increase. That was the philosophy. That was the thinking of their day in the Jewish thinking. The second point is a discussion of the dowry, or price to be paid for the bride. The bride's father would portray her as a jewel in order to increase the dowry that he would be getting from the prospective groom. He would also puff up the family and their status as well. Jesus, who is often described as a groom in the New Testament, also paid a dowry for his bride, the believers. Other grooms typically would attempt to negotiate the price down. Jesus paid the highest price possible, his own life. 1 Corinthians chapter 7, verse 23. You are bought with a price. Do not be slaves of men. Once an agreement about the bride's price was reached, the groom had to make his intentions known to his future bride in front of other people. This often took place in the form of a meal between the two families. If the groom's intentions were met with enthusiasm by the bride, he would pass her a cup of wine. This gesture represents the actual modern day, "Would you marry me?" Her acceptance of the wine, demonstrated by her drinking of the cup, was viewed as her acceptance of the proposal and would signal a permanent commitment in their relationship. Jesus made his covenant contract known to us in the form of a meal, and how he gave the cup of wine, hereby requesting acceptance of that proposal. It even hinted how much the dowry would be, nothing less than the pouring out of his blood. Luke, the 22nd chapter, verse 20, it says, "In the same way he took the cup after having dined, saying, 'This cup is a new covenant in my blood, which is being poured out for you.'" To drink the cup with someone after it had already been accepted by another person indicated a new proposal, and thus it was assumed that the current betrothal, if you want to call it that, was due to unfaithfulness. Jesus gave the assurance that this would never happen, that he was faithful to his bride, the church, and Jesus was severely tested on paying that dowry. He had to pay, he had to sacrifice his life. It was there was no option of backing out. If he did not persist with the dowry, the marriage would be off. Just like he invented people to marry him by giving them the cup to drink, so his Father invited him, Jesus, to pay the dowry by sacrificing his life for us by using the marriage imagery of the drinking of the cup. Matthew chapter 28, verse 42, "He went away the second time and prayed, saying, 'My Father, if this cup may not pass away from me unless I drink it, your will be done.'" You see the imagery there? The cup referred to the marriage symbol, marriage customs of that time. It symbolized sharing of good times and bad times, sharing of everything life had to offer, and also suffering. Drinking the cup meant partaking wholly in the other's life, fulfilling the conditions of the proposal's promise, including the payment of the dowry, faithfulness, and anything else that existed. Jesus referred to his paying the dowry as drinking from the cup. John chapter 18, verse 11. Then Jesus said to Peter, "Put your sword into the sheath. The cup which my Father has given me, shall I not drink it?" Puts a little different twist on that all of a sudden. Jesus said to James and John, "If you want to marry me spiritually, you will have to share my life, and my life is a life of suffering. In Mark, the 10th chapter, verses 37 and 30 through 39, it says, "They said to him, 'Grant us that we may sit one on your right hand and the other on your left in your glory.' But Jesus said to them, 'You do not know what you ask. Can you drink of the cup which I drink of, and the baptism that I am baptized with?' And they said to him, 'We can.' Jesus said to them, 'You indeed shall drink of the cup which I drink of, and the baptism that I am baptizing you with, you shall be baptized.'" Now it also makes sense what was meant when Paul said in 1 Corinthians chapter 10 verse 21, "You cannot drink of the cup of the Lord and the cup of demons." You cannot be partakers of the Lord's table and of the table of demons. In other words, one had to make a choice of whose cup you are going to drink of. A person could not be betrothed to two grooms at the same time. A choice had to be made. Jesus wanted people to accept his cup of invitation. He was preparing the bride's mansion. He would come to claim the believers as his bride and would take them to his Father's house and cover them there with his love. Once the cup had been accepted and drunk, they were betrothed. It could not be broken, and the only way out was literally through divorce. Another way would be a young woman could also reject the proposal by not taking the cup. That would end that relationship. In order to seal the betrothal, she had to drink the wine, and he had to pay the dowry. They would remain separate until the actual wedding itself. Now, during this time of separation, he would prepare their living quarters, typically a room in his Father's house. The Father would determine when the room was satisfactorily prepared. Arrangements were to be made for the time of the wedding feast as well. Since intentions of marriage also involved procreation and included the idea of expanding the family, this task would take more than just cleaning out the son's room. Excuse me. Inside the Father's house. It may involve building new quarters onto it, or next to it, or part of the Father's house. This would require more than just a few days or a few weeks. Similarly, she, the bride, would use this time to prepare her wedding garments. There was preparation of this phrase, or not phrase, but phase. Once, notice how Jesus also goes to prepare a room for his bride, and how he promises to come back and claim his bride to be together forever. A scripture that you've repeated many times, I'm sure. John 14, verses 2 and 3. "In my Father's house are" what? "Many mansions." Oh, addition to the Father's house. If it were not so, I would have told you. I go to prepare a place for you. And if I go to prepare a place for you, I will come again and receive you to myself, so that where I am, you may be also. Matthew chapter 24, verse 36, it says, "But of that day and hour no one knows but the angels of heaven, only my Father." I got a kick out of this. Over 40 years of ministry, I don't know how many people have said, well, I believe Jesus Christ is coming on such and such a day, such and such a year. And they always have excuses if they were wrong to justify their means. It never fails. Well, only who knows? The Father. In the light of the New Testament imagery, it makes perfect sense. Jesus, the Son, did not know when the wedding feast would take place because it was up to the Father to determine when the room was suitably prepared. It was up to the Father to decide when there was adequate preparation for the celebration of the feast as well. Since these were the Father's decisions, only He knew the outcome of these decisions. When the Father declared everything ready, the groom would make his way to the bride's home to claim her as his own. The entire wedding party would accompany him on this trip. This trip usually happened at night. Loud shouts announcing their arrival. One might say this is where the parable of the 10 virgins come in. There in Matthew 28, 25, verses 1 through 6. The first coming of the groom was to broker the betrothal, to invite the bride to share the cup and pay the dowry. Now believers, yet again, await the groom's arrival, this time for the wedding feast. Jesus left believers with the promise that he would remain faithful until united with them in his Father's kingdom. Then the feast would begin. Matthew 26, verse 29. But I say to you, I will not drink of this fruit of the vine from now on until that day when I drink it new with you in my Father's kingdom. All the symbols always coming back to this marriage, the courtship marriage. Jesus pledged that he would be faithful by not drinking of the cup until the wedding feast. Just like the groom's wedding party arrived at the bride's home with shouts to announce their arrival and claim the bride, Jesus would come from his Father's house with shouts and trumpets to announce his coming. Matthew 24, 31. And he shall send his angels with a great sound of the trumpet, and they shall gather his elect from the four winds, from one end of the heavens to the other. 1 Thessalonians 4:16. For the Lord himself shall descend from heaven with a shout, with the voice of the archangel, and with the trump of God, and the dead in Christ will rise first. Interesting. Now we see why John used this wedding feast, this this story. When you think about it, what a wonderful day that would be. Let me close with this short verse. Revelation 19, verse 7. Let us be glad and rejoice, and we will give glory to him, for the marriage of the Lamb has come, and his wife has prepared herself. Friends, Jesus is coming. He promised it. It will happen. The dowry has been paid. The price has been paid. All that's left is his coming. Let's turn to our closing hymn. Jesus is coming again.